Well, it was yet another scorching hot August day in San Antonio, and the Roadrunners have wrapped up practice for the week, and we are just a few short days away from the season opener. Now, I've covered this team all summer, but I'm not sure anyone knows really what to expect heading into this new season. There's a new starting quarterback, there are new weapons on offense, a lot of new faces on defense, including a new defensive coordinator. Today we'll go in depth with this roster and preview the upcoming UTSA Roadrunners season. And a lot has changed heading into the new year. The last time we saw this team, they had just wrapped up a dominant bowl game win over Temple 31-0. And while this was a great way to end the year and the Roadrunners went 9-4, having their third straight bowl-winning season, you can't help but think that last year was a missed opportunity. After a 5-0 start, UTSA had Big 12 championship aspirations, but losing 3 of their next 5, all one-score losses, those hopes disappeared as quickly as they showed up in the first place. UTSA had spent 3 seasons building towards last year. This was a team with 11 senior starters, including their quarterback, 2 top offensive linemen, 5 players in the front 7, and their best cornerback. This team also featured one of the biggest stars UTSA football has ever seen in their short history, and that is wide receiver Joe Wright. After a rocky freshman season, Wright developed into one of the best receivers in the country. He racked up 1,327 yards and 16 touchdowns as a junior, finishing as the runner-up for the Biletnikoff Award. And it should shock nobody that Joe Wright will not be returning to UTSA this year. After his phenomenal junior season, he declared for the NFL draft and ultimately went in the first round. So needless to say, there are a lot of new faces on this team, and it really is the start of a new era for Roadrunner football. There are some big shoes to fill heading into this new season for UTSA. A lot of teams out there are replacing their quarterback, and that's not a unique challenge for the Roadrunners. But on top of replacing quarterback Jacoby Criswell, they'll also be replacing leading rusher Vince Taylor, leading receiver Joe Wright, and some of their most productive defensive players, such as Eric Crenshaw, Patrick Jenkins, Keith Cowan. It's going to be an interesting year, an exciting one for some new players we've never seen before. And we'll find out if this team has the right core in place to continue taking this program to new heights. One more time, here is a list of all the players from last year that have graduated, declared for the draft, or have transferred away. One of the biggest challenges UTSA has had lately is replacing their linebackers. Last year they had 3 brand new starters that all happened to be seniors. And for the second straight year, they've graduated all 3 starters. That's why I was surprised to see Rafe Wentworth choose to transfer away when playing time was opening up for him, but he's now moved on to South Alabama. One pleasant surprise for UTSA is that star safety Jason Hall has come back for his senior season. He could have easily declared for the draft this year, but wants to improve his draft stock, and this defense is lucky to still have him around. But as we have plenty of new players defensively, there is also a new defensive coordinator, and that is DJ Durkin. He replaces Kelly Jean-Charles, who has moved on to a new job as the head coach of Nevada. He takes over a program that has won 12 games over their last 3 years. Best of luck to Kelly Jean-Charles. DJ Durkin, meanwhile, arrives in UTSA after being fired from Ole Miss, whose defense was not good last year, allowed over 30 points a game. Not many people are sold on this hiring right now, myself included. There's a lot of transferring these days in the college football world, but only one player chose to transfer to UTSA this season, leaving this team to figure out a lot of spots the old-fashioned way. The Roadrunners were under some pressure this year with their recruiting to find some players that could make an impact early on, to find some junior college players that could make the jump to the Big 12 and make an impact. And there were a few key players I wanted to see them add during the final days of the recruiting season. Signing day was very hit or miss for UTSA. They did get some of their top targets, missed on some others that would have been nice to have. Getting John Posick, I think, was really nice. He's a really versatile defender. It was disappointing to miss on Drico Hartfield. I felt like he had a nice ceiling. And linebacker Jalen Davis, I thought, could have been a day one starter. Overall, I'd say it was a solid class for the Roadrunners. They did pick up 5-star receiver Omar Harris as maybe their top addition of the offseason, and they finished with the 44th ranked recruiting class. In this class, they added some much-needed quarterback depth with 2 3-star players, Sky Evans, a quarterback out of Texas, and Jake Garcia, a quarterback from Louisiana. Omar Harris is a dynamic player. I'm sure we're going to see a lot in his freshman season. And John Posick, their top addition on defense, is going to end up playing a lot of safety. There was some speculation he might be a cornerback. He could even play some offense, but they're going to be listing him at safety, and they're hoping he makes an impact this year. Now, I've been out at practice these last few weeks, watching the team and getting to know a lot of these new players, and I wanted to break down the starting roster for both the offense and the defense, and give you a few under-the-radar players that you'll want to keep an eye out for this coming season. We will begin with the offense and the change at quarterback. Trey Irvine, the junior, is the new starting quarterback for UTSA, and I've been watching him very closely, as you would any team with a new quarterback. And I can say, after watching him throughout practices, leading this offense, that I feel he's going to step in and do a pretty good job. I'm not sure there's anything he does that's going to wow you. I think he has pretty average arm strength, average accuracy. He will miss throws from time to time, and he can get outside the pocket and make some things happen. I think his game compares well to Jacoby Criswell. The biggest difference, honestly, is Trey Irvine isn't going to get to play with Joe Wright. And you wonder, without those stars in the offense, does Irvine have what it takes to elevate the players around him? By far, the best playmaker this offense has is senior wide receiver Keytron Jackson, a dynamic receiver with the ball in his hands, who's been the number 2 to Joe Wright for a couple of years. Now he's got to show he can be the number 1 receiver, and I have some questions about that. He doesn't have the most consistent hands, and I'm not sure you can ask him to do everything at the receiver position. But without a doubt, he's a dynamic playmaker. He's going to make big plays happen. You just got to get him the football, whether that be through the air or on the ground. Senior receiver Johnny Jenkins has the impossible task of replacing Joe Wright. Johnny Jenkins is no Joe Wright, but he has made some big-time catches in practice, and I think projects well as a solid possession receiver. But despite being a senior, he has very little playing experience. I've got really high expectations for this next player, true freshman Omar Harris. Getting him in recruiting was huge for UTSA. He was the number 11 ranked receiver in the country with blazing speed. He's a great route runner, but his hands are really inconsistent. He should get a lot of playing time this year, and we'll see how quickly that connection develops with quarterback Trey Irvine. There's no change at the tight end position this year for UTSA, as Curtis Davis will be the starter once again, and Davis is just so solid. He's a reliable receiver, he can stretch the field a little bit. You know what you're getting with Curtis Davis. And Steven Alexander is a good complement who's also a good blocker and can catch the football. I think these two tight ends could be a little busier in the passing game this year. Rounding out the playmakers, we go to the running backs. This year, expect to see a committee led by senior Curtis Mills. Mills has shown some pretty good ability in the past, but was better as a sophomore than he was as a junior. Now, watching him in practice, I think he's had a really good camp, and I think he'll be the lead back going into the year, but a lot could change throughout the season. Who's going to be the complement, and who's going to be the power option in this running game? Jason Williams is going to have a chance, but he's someone I think that's really struggled. He's kind of an awkward running back. He's 6'4", 195, runs really upright. Whenever he gets the football, it seems like he goes down on first contact. I just don't know that he's ready right now to take on a big role. We've seen Deshaun Washington a little bit, but mostly as a special teamer. He's a great kick returner. What can he add on offense? He has some explosiveness, but I think we're looking for a little more between the tackles thump. And I've got one player for you that I didn't really expect much from coming into camp, but I've seen enough where I will pound the table for this guy. Raheem Anderson, the freshman from Coppell, Texas. He brings the size at 6'3", 232. His scouting report didn't wow me, but once I saw him in practice, I think he's got a shot this year. Between the tackles, he's a powerful runner, and he moves the pile, has a really high motor, but he also moves and changes directions really well. And there are some plays that I just can't get out of my mind. I'm hoping they give him a chance this year. The Roadrunners still have their fullback in junior Chuck Bell, and he is a solid option. I'm sure will be out there a fair amount. But let's finish up the offense now with a position group that I think is one of their strongest heading into the season, the offensive line. There's a lot of experience here, and the unit is comprised of 4 seniors and 1 true freshman. The left side of this line is the strongest, and it's anchored by left tackle Jalen Garth. Alongside him is Jay Coley. These two are both good run and pass blockers. Expect a lot of runs to their side. But where there are some concerns is with the true freshman Garrett Jarwin. This team is just very thin across the offensive line, so Jarwin's going to be a true freshman starter. To his right is new starting right guard Gavin Byers, and then Josh Watson, who I was hoping would take a little bit more of a step here in this offseason. He hasn't had the best camp, but I still think he'll be an all-right option at right tackle. But he hasn't looked great going up against Preston Quinn every day. And that'll do it for the offense. Overall, I think there's some pretty good potential with this unit, but I think we're needing at least one receiver or running back to really take a leap this season. Replacing Joe Wright is not going to be easy. All right, let's talk some defense now. This is a unit I am really excited about this year. They've got some star power returning and a couple new faces that I think can make a big impact. It all starts up front with edge rusher Preston Quinn. One of the best in the country, he is an All-American with 43 career sacks. He's an outstanding pass rusher, however his production has dropped with each year he's played. He's come back for his senior season to reverse that trend. On the opposite side, there is the sophomore Corey Zmolik. He picked up 7 sacks as a freshman, has a lot of strength, and I'm expecting him to take a really good leap in his second season. The 2 starting defensive tackles are John Davis and Austin Woods. Davis, I think, will be a very key run defender, one of the best block shedders on the defense. Austin Woods just seems like an average player with below average size. He's only 6'3", 251. We'll see if he holds up against the run. We got 3 new starting linebackers this year, starting with the man in the middle, Darren Malone. Malone is a good downhill run defender and also a pretty good blitzer. Jeff Wilson will play in the base defense with great size at 6'5", 243, but he's not very quick. He's a pure run defender. And then one of my favorite players to watch all throughout practice has been junior college transfer James Johnson. He's only 5'11", 200. He's a small linebacker, but I'm telling you, you can't miss him out there. He's a playmaker. He wants to hit everybody, and he flies around the field. He has the best range And he's the biggest hitter at linebacker in this defense. I can't wait to see what he can do this year. Now we go to the secondary that has to replace star corner A.J. Brown. Nick Dorsey is the top cornerback right now on the depth chart, and he's looked really good in practice. Outstanding athlete, great cover skills, but only 5'11", 185. I think he'll do just fine. And he's got pretty good hands for a DB as well. Now, Brandon Matthews has better cover skill, he's a little bit taller, but he's not quite the athlete. And I think that's led to him not being all that productive in the playing time he's gotten. He's been a slot corner forever, but hasn't picked off a pass since he was a freshman. Perhaps one of my greatest disappointments this year has been KJ Marseille. I felt like he was going to be the next big thing when the Roadrunners recruited him, but he hasn't looked great in practice, and I feel like he's relying too much on his athleticism and not really learning the technique that you need to be a high-level corner. He's been mostly getting reps with the second and third team defense. But let's go out to the safety position now with one of the best players. It's Jason Hall. He can cover, he can run, he can hit. I love watching him when he's down around the box. I'm expecting him to be very entertaining in his senior season. There's a new starting strong safety who had a little playing time last year, and that is Kima Guyton. And I've really liked watching him throughout practice. He's at his best against the run, but he's had his flashes in coverage. I don't think he's going to be great there, shouldn't be manned up on tight ends very often, but he's a fun, aggressive downhill player. And the last defensive player I wanted to talk about is the true freshman, John Posick. He is listed at safety, but he's going to be moving all over this defense as a third safety, nickel corner, extra linebacker. He's just a player they want to get on the field clearly. And without KJ Marseille taking a leap, they're wanting to see if Posick can maybe be that slot corner or play at least a hybrid role. Now, I haven't forgotten about special teams. I watched those sessions as well. And the kicker is sophomore Keith Combs, and they've really wanted to get him better at kicking from range. And he's been shaky at that. He didn't make a kick longer than 49 yards last year, and I'm not sure his accuracy is a whole lot better this season. The punter, meanwhile, is Blair LaFrance. He's back for his second year, and still doesn't have the strongest leg. He averaged only 36 yards a punt last season. Hopefully it gets somewhat better this year. And that'll do it for the roster breakdown here for UTSA going into the new season. I think there's reasons to be hopeful on both sides of the football, but definitely replacing Joe Wright seems to be one of the biggest challenges going into the year. Do they have the same offensive firepower? And if not, is the defense good enough to hold teams to under 24 points or so to give the offense a fighting chance? Early on, I want to see how these receivers play. Can Ketron Jackson be a number one receiver? And who's going to step up as the number two? Can Omar Harris be that player? And then at running back, who knows what to expect? We'll see if a star emerges out of this Roadrunner backfield. And the action this year gets kicked off in just a few days against Nevada in the Alamo Dome. We'll reunite with Kelly Jean Charles in this matchup, the season kickoff. We take on Rice in week 2, also at home. Our road games out of conference are against Virginia Tech and Oregon. Iowa State gets us underway in the Big 12 slate, followed by K-State, Texas, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Baylor, UCF, and we wrap it all up against Cincinnati, again at the Alamo Dome. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the upcoming season for the UTSA Roadrunners, and here's a look at the career stats coming into this season, just to show you how inexperienced a lot of these areas are. It's the nature of college football. Everybody's replacing stars. There are massive unknowns going into each and every season, but UTSA just has a lot of unknown at a lot of key spots, and expectations are pretty high, given the track record of these last few seasons. But y'all take care, and I'll see you here shortly at the Alamo Dome as we kick off another year of UTSA football. Have a great day, everybody.